The style of David Foster Wallace defies description in an age where the novel is constantly being threatened by the allure of technological advancement. He put it back on the map with his mammoth work, Infinite Jest. When he is not writing novels of extraordinary length, he is out chronicling America for publications like Harper's, Esquire, and Premier. A supposedly fun thing I'll never do again is a collection of the pieces he has written on everything from the genius of David Lynch to tennis to the horrors of a cruise ship. I am pleased to have him back on this broadcast. Your dad is a professor of philosophy.
Yeah.
He was a protege of George Will's father, who also taught same school, same department, and considered him as an influence on his life.
Dad's been at the University of Illinois since the early 60s, and when Dad first came, Fred Will, who's now, I think, in his 70s, was, you know, maybe in his 40s or 50s, and was a guy of major stature. And he was nice to Dad. And I think most junior academics, this is what happens, is, you know, you find older people in the department whose intellectual approach is congenial to you and who are nice to you, and you kind of become friends with them. I was a philosophy major in college, but my areas of interest were mathematical logic and semantics and stuff, which my dad thinks is kind of gibberish. So it's very weird. In a certain way, I'm following in Dad's footsteps, but I'm also doing the required, you know, thumbing the nose at the father thing. And the stuff that I was doing was really more math than it was philosophy. And I don't know whether I would have taught. If you're good enough at that, they just kind of put you in a think tank and let you write on yellow paper. There's a thing at Princeton where they hire, if they're supposedly professors, they don't teach any classes. They just sit and devise proofs.
But I don't think everybody should have to teach, do you?
I heartily agree with you.
Yeah. I mean, I would hope we're getting away from that sort of, and then likewise, you hope that you can get away from this notion of publish or perish, too.
Yeah, oh boy, don't even get me started on teaching. Teaching, you learn an enormous amount. The cliche turns out to be true. The teacher learns a lot more than the students. You do for about 2 or 3 years, and then the curve falls off sharply. And most of the older teachers that I know, except for a very few geniuses, are extremely bored with teaching and are not very interested in their students, and they're going through the motions and the students are going through the motions. And there's a weird schizophrenia about higher education, because people are hired to teach, and to teach college students who are preparing to enter the field themselves, yet on the other hand, very often they're judged and given or denied tenure based on their own work. And I think administrators believe that the two are compatible. They're really not. They're entirely different. And the more time and energy spent on teaching, which is extraordinarily hard to do well, the less time spent sort of on your own work. I'm in a good position because I was hired. I mean, I didn't have much teaching experience. I was hired because, you know, I write a lot and publish stuff, and that's really all I care about. And I hadn't had much teaching experience, and so you learn a lot right at the beginning. But I'm coming up on, this is my 4th year, and I'm already
So you've kind of burned out and bottomed out and plateaued. So all you students.
I think I think I've developed an aesthetic, or I've developed a position, and I find myself saying this year the same thing I said last year, and it's a little bit horrifying. I got very lucky and got a grant, so I can take next year off as an unpaid leave, and I don't really have to confront the decision.
And so what will you do with that year?
I will, if past experience holds true, I will probably write an hour a day and spend 8 hours a day biting my knuckle and worrying about not writing.
Worrying about not writing?
Yeah.
Not worrying about what to write?
Right. Yeah. Worrying about not writing. Concatenation.
Yeah. Respect means a lot to you. Sort of a sense that I'm taken seriously and respected for my work.
You can read this in my face?
Yeah. I can read it in terms of what's been written about you and what you've said.
Show me somebody who doesn't like to be respected. I guess there's a certain amount of ambivalence about, say, the reception that Infinite Jest got, because, you know, every writer dreams of having a lot of attention.
You bet.
But the fact of the matter is, this is a long, difficult book, and a lot of the attention began coming at a time when, I mean, I can do elementary arithmetic. A lot of people hadn't had time to read the book yet. So the stuff about me, or interesting rumors that develop about the book, and all that stuff getting attention, I found that, I didn't like that very much, just because I wanted people to read the book. I'm sorry that I'm essentially stuttering.
No, you're doing just fine.
So other than that, I mean, I don't think I'm more hungry for respect than the average person.
Let me talk about this book, a supposedly fun thing I'll never do again, which is one of the pieces in here. I want to talk about David Lynch, who, after I read your piece in Esquire, was it Esquire? No, Premier. Premier. I interviewed David Lynch. You never got to interview David Lynch.
Well, I said from the outset, this is the reason they let me on the set of all the other journalists, is I was the only one who said he did not, in fact, want to interview David Lynch.
Why did you want to go observe David Lynch?
I found, you mean why did I not want to interview him, or
no,
why did
well, why was David Lynch interesting to you as the subject of a magazine piece?
For me, the number of film directors who get national distribution in this country who are truly interesting as artists is very, very small, and Lynch was one of them for me. I've been interested in Lynch's films for a long time, and actually in grad school, I think there's a thing about this in the essay. Blue Velvet came at a time for me when I really needed to see it, and it helped me a lot in my own work. And then after that, I went and found Eraserhead and have sort of followed this guy's career, and I find him instructive and useful to think about, for whatever that's worth.
Did you like the movie Lost Highway?
I have not seen the movie Lost Highway. I've seen the rough cut of Lost Highway, or scenes. They let me go in and sit in what I believe to be David Lynch's personal editing chair, and look at on the little monitor and see, which was the thrill of my life. But I've been on this tour, and even though I'm in big cities, I have not yet gotten to see it, and I'm kind of terrified because there's a big part of the essay that talks about what the movie's about, and if indeed the movie is nothing like that, I'm going to look. Yeah.
When he was here, I asked him about what was Lynchian. And I took that right out of your piece.
And I'm sure he just looked at you and blinked very slowly.
Well, he didn't have a great answer, because I don't think he thinks that way. He obviously doesn't think that way.
There's a part in the essay that kind of does this academic, let's unpack the idea of Lynchian, and what Lynchian means is something about the unbelievably grotesque existing in a kind of union with the unbelievably banal, and then it gives a series of scenarios about what is and isn't Lynchian. Jeffrey Dahmer was borderline Lynchian.
Borderline.
Well, the refrigerator. And actually what was Lynchian was having the actual food products next to the disembodied bits of the corpse. I guess the big one is, a regular domestic murder is not Lynchian, but if the man, if the police come to the scene and see the man standing over the body, and the woman, let's see, the woman's 50s bouffant is undisturbed, and the man and the cops have this conversation about the fact that the man killed the woman because she persistently refused to buy, say, for instance, Jif peanut butter rather than Skippy, and how very, very important that is. And if the cops found themselves somehow agreeing that there were major differences between the brands, and that a wife who didn't recognize those differences was deficient in her wifely duties, that would be Lynchian. This weird confluence of very dark, surreal, violent stuff and absolute, almost Norman Rockwell, banal American stuff, which is terrain he's been working for quite a while. I mean, at least since Blue Velvet.
You think the failure of Dune was good for his career? Because it made him understand a system that he didn't want to be part of.
What happened to Lynch with Dune, and now I'm getting a lot of this from my research, which was published stuff. It's not like, Mr. Lynch and I had coffee and he told me this stuff. But Lynch's career for a while had a kind of Richard Rodriguez arc to it. Eraserhead, like El Mariachi, this enormously cool independent film, and it attracts the attention of people with money. The first one is Mel Brooks, and Brooks hires him to do The Elephant Man. And The Elephant Man is a fantastic film, and its lighting and atmospherics, nothing else. So anyway, because of that, Dino De Laurentiis hires him to do Dune, and now Dune at the time is equivalent to what like Twister or The Rock would be now. It's this enormous. This is a product, and there's all this money at stake. And Dune itself, the novel, I don't know if people read it anymore, but it's a tremendously complicated science fiction novel. Anyway, so you don't need an hour-long narrative of this, but Lynch does the thing and doesn't do it all that well, but what really happens is the money men come in and they cut, like, I think 35 minutes out of the movie, and it renders the movie incoherent. I mean, literally incoherent. And it was a huge flop, and I think Lynch ate the flop and decided that what he wanted to do is he wanted to, rule over small films rather than serve large corporate ones. I mean, he was really one of the first. We see a lot of them now, the Cinemax and Fine Line directors, these kind of independents who are doing stuff a little out of the mainstream but still getting national distribution. As far as I can tell, Lynch really pioneered that ground. He was really the first one to be doing small, eccentric films that got a very wide release, with Blue Velvet being the best example. And this may be entirely false. I mean, I'm not a film scholar.
But you like movies.
I do like movies.
A lot.
Front row. Yeah.
Okay, me too. English Patient.
You're seriously asking me for my view on English Patient? I thought English Patient was an extremely well-done, slick commercial movie. I thought it was beautifully lit. I thought, the desert looks like a body.
It was David Leanian for you.
I thought it was like David Lean's Lawrence of Arabia in some ways. I felt the story was somewhat predictable, and some of the sentimental stuff at the end seemed to me like stuff I'd seen 250 times before. But in all fairness and in all respect to Michael Ondaatje, I felt the same way about the book, which I actually really like Ondaatje's poetry. He's got a book called A Few Tricks I Can Do with a Knife that's really good. I didn't think The English Patient was his best book.